Today I'm going to present about the wine and beverage knowledge. So first of all, going to the content page. The content page I'm separated into two parts. So the part one is going to be a very basic questions. So the questions are going to be red wine, white wine, rosé wine, and what is wine. Also, the fermentation process are all included in the questions. And also, the very important things is the environment issues or the environmental aspects that gonna cause the winery or the vineyard in the future or in nowadays. So for the part two, I'm gonna talk about the questions that left in the report. So let's move on to the wine. What is wine? Basically, everyone knows wine as an alcoholic beverage that we have drunken in every day. So wine is a long known for thousands of years ago, people being known and famous for people nowadays. So firstly, most people who consume usually called it grape wine. So actually all of the wine are made from the grapes, but we're gonna go further what the wine that we use to make red wine, white wine, and rosé wine. And also in the past of the century, there are French people have drinking the wine, and it was so famous at the time. And also many of the countries including Thailand also have this wine. We actually have mixed, or we have like a different fermentation method that have like, when we have a different fermentation method and doing our own winery in our countries, the grapes are very different. Like in the Thailand, there are some areas like in Chiang Mai or Khao Yai that we actually have the vineyard, which is very different from other countries. Like from France, they're gonna grow the grape or harvesting the grapes in the very top of the mountain of the vineyard. So the grapes are very different. So the taste that gonna give into the drink or the alcoholic beverage like wine is gonna be so different. So I'm going to go further to the red and white, also the rosé wine are made. So for the white wine are made from the green grapes. First of all, regardless of the green or dark grapes, all grape juice after pressed are either clear, pale, or white, greenish in color. White wines are wine made by fermentation. Only the grapes juice, all the skin and seeds are separated immediately after crushing the grapes. You cannot put the grapes, like for the white wine, we usually have the green grapes that we're gonna put inside the machine. We're not going to put it in the machine first because we need to de-stemming them first. For the red wine, the process of making red wine is actually similar to the white wine, except both seeds are skin left in the juice during fermentations. Red wine get all of their red and purple color from the green of the grapes, and also in the addition to the color, they also impart other flavors and textures to the wine. Also their tannins. Let's move on to the rosé wine. Rosé wine is made from red or purple grapes, and it's totally different to the white and red wine. It is somewhere between white wine and red wine. Okay, so after crushing the grape skins, we'll be left macerating with the juice for a few hours. The juice will take on the color from the skin as well as the flavors. This result is a Plinglish wine, with tannins and additional flavors extracted from its skin, such as dry flowers, are included. So this slide is going to show you how the red wine are made. So the fermentation goes into this process, but it's actually very important, but we're gonna talk it after that. So how red wine are made, that I have mentioned before, but this is the pictures that you're gonna see the very clear if you don't see the pictures from the last slide. So first we're gonna harvest the grapes, and we're gonna de-stemming like the white wine. Also, the third step is crushing. For the crushing, we're going to the alcoholic fermentation and devating, and also we're gonna do packing and aging and bottling. For the white wine are made by crushing, pressing, fermentation, maturation, bottling, and become the white wine. For the rosé wine are the same process as white wine, but they're differentiated in the colors of grapes that used. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the corks inside. Okay, so basically the corks is, when you see the bottle of wine, the corks are the opening of the wine. So they have two separate types. So the first one is natural corks and synthetic corks. So for the natural one, it's made from the bark of the oak. Every often the bark is stripped from the trees in a sheet, and it is then processed with the wine or bottles that are stamped on the bottles. For the synthetic are usually made from various plastic compounds, like excellent but so expensive in the wine. So as I have seen in nowadays, to illustrating this one, the natural corks are not too expensive. Like when we use the natural cork one, it's gonna be in a very cheap wine. But for the synthetic corks, it's actually made for using in the expensive wine. Tannin. The tannin is a naturally occurring polyphenol found in plants, seed, bark, roots, leaf, and fruit skins. Polyphenols are macromolecules made of phenols. Also, the complex bonds of oxygen and hydrogen molecules. So in these pictures, we're gonna see all the wine tannins. The one is grape seeds, the second one is tannin powders, and the third one is grape skin and the tannin powders, which are the different one of the tannin powders. So let's move on to the three major types of wine. As we have talked about the process, now we're going to move further to the type of wine, to a deeper of the description. Red wine is made from black grapes. It ranges in color shade from light to dark. It also has the sweetness taste, and it's dry and some is very sweet. For example, Cabernet, Pinot, Merlot, Gamay. And for the white wine is mostly produced using green grapes, but sometimes it is made usually black grapes. White wine, we actually see of the flavors from light and very tasty to rich and creamy. For example, Chardonnay, Blanc, Pinot Blanc, and Muscat. For the rosé wine is a dry wine that is most refreshing and white wine as we have seen these days. Rose wine are typically made in one or two ways, which are passed with the winemaker pressing the grapes and crushing. Further after all, the fermentation and storing are the last process, in which the same as the white and red wine. Now I'm gonna move further to the Old World and New World. So the Old World is basically wine from the Old World tend to be very light body, more restrained and lower in alcohol. In Old World, people doesn't consume a lot of alcoholic beverage, or in another word, we consume, but it's actually have a very low percentage of alcohol inside the wine. In the Old World, countries have in common is that the winemaking is heavily restricted with guidelines all wineries must have to follow. So for the New World wine are from the countries or region where winemaking were imported. During the age of exploration, New World wine countries include the United States, South Africa, Chile, Argentina, and New Zealand, and New World wine regions. For the vintage wine, a vintage wine is one made from grapes that were all or primary grain and picked in a single specific year. Most of the white wine and red wines in Australia come from a single vintage. And for the specific vintage year, it's printed on the front label of each bottles. So if you want to know what is the vintage wine and when you go to the supermarket or the stores, if you really want to notice where or when does the vintage are created, there's gonna be like a label on the wine. So if you notice that each vintage wine has a unique flavor profile reflective of the fruit picked during the year. For the winemaking process, the winemaking process consists of harvesting grapes, extracting juice, fermentation, pressures, and filtration, and aging and bottling. For the foxy Roman flavor, the musty odor and flavor of wines made from Lambrusco grapes native to North America, usually something undesirable. Terms used to describe the strong grapey smell and taste of some wine made from grapes, such as the Catawba, Niagara, and Delaware. The grapes once were called fox grapes, which account from the word foxy. So the question is, why do you call some wine by region and other wine by grape varietals? So basically the reason for this is a very historical fact that has happened in the past in Europe around the very olden days. There was no separation between where someone grows the grape and what our wine calls, like, for example, the Burgundy, Chianti, Bordeaux, and Rioja. In most of these regions, these grapes were selected over a generation of growers to work perfectly in those regions. For the later on, also in the nowadays, like about 100 years ago, people start naming their wines similar names to this unknown region. For the 10 grapes used in white wine, it's basically have Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Marsanne, Muscat, Pinot Blanc, Riesling, Roussanne, Viognier, Semillon, and Gewürztraminer. Sorry for the spelling. 10 grapes used for red wine, Pinot Noir, Cornivar, Grenache, Muscardin, Lambrusco, Cabernet Gamay, Lambrusco, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Sorry for the pronunciation. So why does the geography so important to the wine, and why do we need to know the geography? The reason that the geography is of the wine is important is because wine has been described as a window in places, cultures. The wine has been so historical in places, like for the French people. They drink wine. What type of they drink wine? They're gonna show like, okay, so when you go to other country, when you see them drink this wine, you're gonna see like, oh, this is very like, they actually prefer to the wine. And most of learning of the cultures, we can actually know their countries more and further. Since the time of the early Greeks and Romans, we're gonna move further to the historical things. When we realize that the same grape grown in different geographic regions produce wine with differing factors and taste characteristics, geographers have technical input to the wine industry, with exciting new research tackling subjects such as the impact of climate change on grapes and using to remote sensing and geographical information system for improving the quality of crops. As I have the things that I have mentioned before is actually important, but the second thing that actually important for the geography, because when we go to the vineyard or the winery, we're gonna saw we need to have like geographical plans to actually notice that there are some disadvantageous thing or the advantageous thing occurring to the crops. So we need to analyze all of the crops and everything before we harvest the grapes. For the environment, so the environmental factor affect the quality of grapes. There are climate, the plant's environment, and the temperature. So the climate or lack of water or high temperatures will challenge the process of growing wine in southern areas. The plant's environment, the factors like climate, weather, and soil affect the quantity and quality of the fruit. Also, heat is essential. The plant uses sunlight and chlorophyll to produce the glucose it needs for growth. And also, it needs to combine to the water. For the temperatures, during a growth cycle, the wine needs an average of 16 to 22 degrees Celsius to undergo photosynthesis. In addition, different varieties need different amounts of heat to reach optimal ripeness. For the white and red wine of Germany, it's gonna have the Burgunder, Silvaner, Müller, Turgunder, and Spätburgunder. For the white wine and red wine of Australia, there's gonna have Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, and Verdelho. So I'm gonna talk about the history of village farm and winery vineyard in the Austria. The village farm and winery was the first place in the country that came up with new design and new technical equipment that can be able to stock and ferment the grapes better than the old equipment. The areas in which the vineyard is settled features ancient volcanic soils similar to the Lombardy and Burgundy regions to Italy. The two main varieties of grapes cultivated here are Shiraz from the Jordan Valley in Israel and Cabernet Sauvignon from Australia. For the wine fermented in this village winery, the process of fermentation is after the destemmer. The wine is pumped into the tank to begin fermentation. The process of the fermentation in winemaking turns grape juice into an alcoholic beverage by starting to putting the grapes inside the container and with the right temperature, adding yeast, which turn the sugar into juice into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The grape juice will ferment. During the fermentation, yeast transforms sugars present in the juice into ethanol and carbon dioxide. The wine blending is Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Carmenère. Wine has the highest alcohol percentage. To compare with red, white, and rosé wine, the highest alcohol percentage would be red and white. Why does it's gonna be the red and white? The red and white have 12.5% to 14.5% of alcohol, in which rose wine contains only 12.5 to 13.5 alcohol beverage. Temperature for serving the wine. So I'm gonna give the table charts for you to actually look for the clearly solution. So first of all, the type of wine. There's gonna be Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Carmenère. For the serving temperature for Cabernet Sauvignon, it's gonna be 60 degrees, and for the Malbec, it's gonna be 59 to 64 degrees, and Merlot is gonna be 60 to 65 degrees. Cabernet Franc is gonna be 60 degrees, and Carmenère is gonna be also 60 degrees. For the shelving wine, I have made the chart too. So first of all, the types of wine. Also the same as before. I'm not gonna repeat it again. So for the Cabernet Sauvignon, aging of shelf gonna be 7 to 10 years. Malbec gonna be 7 to 11 years. Merlot's gonna be 3 to 5 years. Cabernet Franc is gonna be 2 to 4 years. And Carmenère is gonna be 2 to 5 years. How does we gonna know the wine is corked? So basically, the wine is corked is determined as a very bad smell that occurring when the bottle has been exposed to high heat or temperature spike. It is very impossible to tell because wine suffer potential heat damage without opening their bottle. If the cork is protruding from the bottle top, that could be due to temperature spikes or from freezing temperatures. Lastly, if examining the cork, and people can easily see telltale signs of wine residue on the side of the cork and not in an even pattern starting with the bottom of the cork. The chances are strong that your wine has been exposed to higher than normal temperatures. So when you actually have the wine and you have already drinking like 2 to 3 months ago, and then you just can't remember when you just like put the cork out, and then when you get it back, you didn't get it back. Essentially, you need to get it back to contain all of the taste and the smell at the same times. But how can determine the wine on cork? So basically, I just told you the state in the slide before. But to conclude, the cork can be determined by when you're opening the cork of the wine, the natural or synthetic corks, and then you forgot or something. And then you look at it again, and then you test the wine after the few years that you have been left without using cork to close it. And then after a while you taste again. It's gonna taste very different when you have bought it, since it has some temperatures or the heat coming too, so it can change all the flavors and the smell of the wine. So let's move on to the Australia. Australia vineyard has around 60 wine growing regions scattering around the countries. In South Australia, may be best known in Barossa Valley region. But wine buffs won't be disappointed with drop from the hills, the valley, the Macquarie Vale, and etc. The Vast Felix Winery is the winery that I'm gonna talk about. Type of grapes in this vineyard is gonna be the Sauvignon, the Chardonnay. Many of these grapes are specialties in these regions, and the weather is also suitable in this field to have a winery and vineyard. How are the wine fermented in this factory or the vineyard? The wine is West Felix Winery are almost the same ideas to many of the winery in Australia. It's actually have their process which called malolactic fermentation. This is a process in which the tart tasting and naturally presenting grape are converted to soft tasting lactic acid in the chemical form. They have used the decarbonylation, which means that carbon dioxide are included in the fermentation process. Okay, so this is the pictures how are the Vast Felix Winery have their fermentation method. So how are the wine fermented inside the Vast Felix Winery? So actually I just show you the pictures of it, but I'm gonna explain a little bit. The wine are almost the same as in Australia. They have the fermentation process, which I'm gonna conclude that it's actually the same as the fermentation as in other countries. But in the malolactic fermentation, there's gonna be a little bit details on it. As you see in the pictures, there are carbon dioxide, lactic acid, and malate acid and lactic bacteria. They're gonna put out all the carbon dioxide out, and there's gonna increase the lactic acid inside the wine and the malic inside the tank. Highest alcohol percentage. According to the list that I have given for the blending, the highest alcohol percentage from which of the lists are Merlot and other types of blend are lower percentage. So pairing food with the wine. By using this wine, it is more flavorful and very colorful, with rich red and meat sauces that match with Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and of course Shiraz. For the giving protein, this could match wine to meat. So for the temperature of serving the wine with the food, the time for red wine to serve should be uncorked and decanted at least 30 to 60 minutes before serving. So for the white wine, it is best served cold, keep chilled when serving. Let's move on to the next country, to Spain. The Rioja Wineries is the wineries or the vineyard that I have chose. It is located in the north of Spain. The Rioja region has been the center of culture since Roman times, and is Spain's most famous winemaking areas. This province is divided into 3 sub-areas: Alta, Rioja Alavesa, and Rioja Baja. Okay, so the Ribera del Duero wineries. This is located in the south and west of Rioja, or 100 miles north of Madrid, in the Ribera del Duero wine region, and home to the Spain's most famous winery, Vega. Although wines have been made here since the Vega times was founded in 1864, it was not until the 1980s when the region became an official viticultural area and an influx of international investment occurs in this region in the time world have spotlight. Overall, in many past years, the winery is still open, and there have so many tourists from other countries coming in to the winery in Spain. Catalunya, or the Carinina. Catalunya red wines are made from Tempranillo, which are known in Catalan, or Garnacha, or Monastrell. Grapes that are grown in the vineyard are Godello, Macabeu, Palomino Fino, Verdejo, red grapes, and Bordeaux. So for the wine fermented, the temperatures are the primary things that process grapes, which are taking 1 or 2 weeks. Following the fermentation, the winemaker will store the wine in various vessels, such as the barrels or the stainless steel tanks. For the wine blend, the red Rioja, the wines that blend are this kind of grapes, usually blend with the other types of grape, for instance the Tempranillo. The Tempranillo, as the pictures above, this is a type of a spiced dark fruit with smoky flavors. Ribera enchants in anything of a grilled roasted meat and rich pastas. For the history of the winery and the vineyard for Spain, I have chosen 3 of them. The Saint Esteve, they collect and store famous ingredients from the wine. Saint Esteve is located near the left bank of the France, which can enrich many kinds of grapes to harvest and make good products to fulfill the wines. The Côte vineyard. The vineyard of the Côte d'Or were mostly included in a classification system called AOC or AC in the 1930s. Paul Chevrolet Annie. Paul Chevrolet Annie was Johan's dominant producer for most of the second half of the 20th century, and uncertainly in the early 2000s. This stabilizing winery still stands, one of the most important estates in the regions. The winery has acquired an invaluable portfolio over the years, but Chevrolet's most famous bottling is Hermitage. Types of grapes in Bordeaux, Burgundy, and Rhone. For the 3 pictures that I have found, for the Bordeaux, the Cabernet Sauvignons are the most suitable in the countries and the type of grapes in Bordeaux. The Burgundy gonna be Aligoté, and Rhone gonna be Viognier. The highest alcohol percentage. The Bordeaux contain 30%, Burgundy contain 30.5%, Rhone wine contain 15%. So pairing food. Bordeaux gonna pair with steak frites. Burgundy gonna compare with boeuf bourguignon, and Rhone gonna compare with truffles with wine. Okay, so now the part 2, the question and answer section. What is the most expensive French wine? So the French wine, they have so plenty of many of different kinds and types of the French wine, but the most expensive is Prétis. The Prétis is red wine and consists of mixed with the dominant grapes, which are called Merlot. The costs are more than $1,000. The French area that are famous for most wine. The Bordeaux is the most famous place for wine because the Bordeaux vineyard is the only one with immediate access to the sea. It actually have a very good view and structures of geographical areas that actually be so easy to transportations and easily to export the grapes and also harvesting the grapes. We actually receive the most of the sunlight there. The advantages. France major wine exporting region for many centuries, and plenty of historic wine can make Bordeaux a must destination for wine admirers. So France, three most famous wine that we actually most saw them drinking in the daytimes and an appetizers or the aperitifs. So the most famous wine is the Romanée-Conti in Burgundy and Petrus in Pomerol in Bordeaux, which is very expensive, and Chateau Margaux in Bordeaux. How long can Chablis be stored before drinking? So the appellation Chablis Contrôlé gonna storing for 2 to 5 years, and appellation Chablis Premier Cru Contrôlés gonna store to 3 to 7 years. And for this one, it is so famous and is have a very long time storing time for the years. It took 5 to 12 years to store this one. Appellation Chablis Grand Cru Contrôlé. So what wine glass do you use with Chinon? So actually we commonly have, as in the slide, I have shown the pictures of the white glasses using for the Chinon, but actually we use the white as we see. But actually for the Chinon we also use the white one too. As people have seen nowadays, the 3 ounces glass is most suitable for the light body and the wine. So 2004 or 2005 or domain of Romanée-Conti, I have been compared. So let's see the pictures before we go further. The left side is 2004 of domain and Romanée-Conti, and the right side is 2005 domain of Romanée-Conti. 2004 of domain of Romanée-Conti in 2004. This is a very great vintage for Romanée-Conti, but production was so lower than usual, and therefore the price got steeper. They will be hard to find in nowadays. And 2005 domain of Romanée-Conti. 2005 domain of Romanée-Conti are better because in 2005 the red wine was specially in Burgundy. The year 2005 is generally a better vintage in Burgundy than 2004. For the Hermitage, there have been separated into 2 Hermitage. There are Hermitage and Crosses Hermitage. So I'm gonna talk about the Hermitage first. The Hermitage, the most famous one, is considered as one of the best red wines. Hermitage has granite soil, while Croix has more than clay and sand. Hermitage vineyards are located at the top of the hill, gaining full exposure from the sun. And for the Croix Hermitage, the main difference are soil. While the Hermitage cultivate land at the heart of the mountain and get most of its sunlight, but Croix are different. There are land that below the Hermitage areas. Thank you.